So I've started recording now. The voting is via Slido, so please make sure that you can access Slido. Hopefully you've had some time to do that. In the live meeting, which is this, which are 27 of you are in, the motions will appear one by one on Slido. So just wait for the next one to pop up. For those of you who are attending the meeting later, watching on video, you'll be able to vote for the next 24 hours, and we will add the votes for the purposes of recording them for the final result. There are some votes that we need to rely on the votes that we get in the meeting in order to advance those issues through the meeting. So we're doing the best we can. This is the most democratic we've ever had a General Assembly in our association, I believe, because this General Assembly can be accessed by all of our members, not just those who are physically present at the conference. So we're doing our best to include everyone, but bear with us. I'm sure it'll be okay. In terms of attendees, we have your names through Slido. We also have the participants list. But the first order of business is the election of the chair of the General Assembly, which is why I'm moving quickly towards doing that to pass it over to the chair, because I am the president and do not chair the General Assembly. So we have our first motion, which is to elect Jane Murray as the chair of the General Assembly. And if you notice on Slido now, you should be able to see a motion where you can vote in favour or against that motion. And you should also be able to see the results of that. So this is a procedural motion for which we only need a simple majority. So we've got 27 people. A whole bunch of people have not voted as yet. So if you could quickly vote. Otherwise, I believe we have to call this one, as we do have support over 50% of the people who are in attendance. Okay, we have 20 of 21 voting in favour of that motion. Are we happy to accept that motion and move forward? Yes, by acclaim. Thank you very much. So I'm going to hand over to Jane, who is going to chair the meeting for us. Jane, over to you.
Many thanks, Carlo. Hello, everyone. I'm just double checking that everybody could hear me. Okay, so if you could give me a thumbs up, that would be just wonderful. Great, wonderful, thank you. Thank you, Carlo, and thank you to the board for getting this online meeting together. It's a wonderful way in which we can still all join together, unfortunately not physically, but over the airwaves, which is wonderful. Obviously, these meetings usually take place at the IAWBH conferences, and I'm sure that you would all join me in thanking the board for, in the wake of the COVID pandemic, being able to organise an alternative option for us to all get together. I'd also like to thank all the attendees from all around the world. Here in the UK, it's nice and early, and I know in the in New Zealand it's a little bit later in the day, so we're all branching across the world right now, which is wonderful. As Carlo mentioned, all of the voting is going to be undertaken on Slido. This voting will be open for a period of 24 hours for inclusivity for those members who haven't been able to join us right now, who would like to vote on any of the motions that are going forward. In terms of the agenda, what I'll be doing is, where there is a person who is noted as speaking to that agenda item, I'll be asking them to speak to that agenda, and where there is a motion, I'll ask them to propose that motion at the end of speaking to that particular agenda item. From there, I will ask for a seconder for the particular motion. And if you have a look just at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a box or an icon that says participants, and I can see 29 at the moment. If you click on that, you will see that there is an opportunity to raise your hand. If you would like to second a motion, or you would like to talk to a motion or ask a question, which will happen at the end of the period that the person is talking about that particular issue or agenda item. If you raise your hand, and if I could ask perhaps a couple of you to raise your hand now, or click the button to raise your hand so I can see, or if you click the button so I can see that Alison and Leanne, Sarah, Cecilia, Helgi, Stephen, wonderful. If I could ask you to lower your hands now, that would be wonderful. So we know that the technology works. That's wonderful. Okay. Excuse me. Once we've had a seconder for the motion, we'll go to Slido. Carlo will put the motions up on Slido. We'll then ask you all to vote. As Carlo mentioned, for procedural motions, we need a 50% majority of people here at the meeting, but obviously those not attending the meeting will also be able to vote afterwards. With constitutional motions, as you will see in the agenda, there are several of those. We do need a 2/3 majority for those to be carried. And what I can do on those constitutional motions is give an indication that the motion is likely to carry or not, but then it will be in 24 hours time that we will know the correct outcome of those. Okay, everyone all right with those? Wonderful. So we're now moving to agenda item 3, which is apologies. I note that Eva has given Annie's apologies and given us an update on how Annie is doing, and I'm sure that Shane will include those in the minutes. Shane, do you have, or Carlo, President, do you have any other apologies that you'd like to share?
Yes, Mariam Omari offers her apologies as well. She's a board member.
If there's anybody else that would like to offer an apology on behalf of another member who hasn't been able to attend, can I please ask you to note that in the chat function now, and Bevan will collect those. Okay. So moving on from apologies, we'll move now to agenda item 4, which is the agreement of the minutes of the 2018 General Assembly held on the 7th of June in Bordeaux. Would like those to be confirmed. As the chair, I'm going to propose this motion, motion 2. I propose that the minutes of the 2018 General Assembly be accepted as true and accurate record of the meeting. Can I please have a seconder for that motion? If you could raise your hand under the participants banner. Stephen? Ali? We have 2. Thank you very much, both of you, for seconding the motion. Can I invite you all now to go to Slido and vote in favour of that motion. As chair, I will abstain for any of the motions at present. So at present we have 20 voted in favour of the motion, and 2 abstentions. So with over 50% of the attendees, of the 31 attendees, oh, we have 21 now, excuse me, I declare that motion as carried. And we can now move on to agenda item 5, which is the President's report. So I will hand over to Carlo now for you to give the report. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jane. Well, again, welcome everyone. It's really great to see you all, even though we can't be together. It's a real shame that we can't be together. It's a real highlight of our association that we get to have our conference every 2 years. And I know that I was looking forward to it, and I know many of you were as well. However, we're doing our best, and we look forward to being able to do that again in the future. My report covers the period from the last General Assembly, from June 2018 through to now, and that's the period about which I'll be talking. These are the main issues that I will be covering. The achievements and developments that we've had, issues of membership, the board's activities and decisions, and there have been many, many activities. It's been a very active period. Our conferences and events, and our strategic plan going forward. I'm also happy to take questions at the end. I think would probably be best, and I'll let Jane facilitate that at the end. So in terms of achievements and developments in the last 2 years, we've been very fortunate. I think there's someone with their microphone open. Do you want to just make sure your microphone's muted? In the last 2 years, we've been very fortunate to have 2 really great masterclasses, one in the UK and another in Israel. I was only able to go to one of those. I was at the London masterclass, as many of you were, and the feedback that we got from that event was that it was really, really a great event. We had similar feedback from the masterclass in Israel. People really enjoyed these events and got a lot out of them. I want to thank the organisers of those events, Yariv and his team, and Kevin and Stephen, and also thank the colleges that sponsored that and facilitated those events to happen, Kinneret College and Birkbeck College. I also want to thank Francis, Ria, and Joe, who've been our social media champions at those events. So Francis and Ria have been developing a social media strategy for us, which I believe is a very important thing for our association to have. We've kind of got a toe in the water, you might say, at the moment. And Joe championed social media for us at the masterclass in Israel. And I've put some examples of some of the tweets that that they were able to put out there into the world that many of you would have seen and shared. And I really want to thank them for doing that. And I encourage you all at our events, as we have our events in the future, to really be conscious of using social media to spread our activities and our association. I also want to thank those who participated, the speakers, the panelists, but just everyone who attended. They were very much workshop based, so it wasn't sit in a room and be lectured. It was very active, and I want to thank you all for being there.
Carlo, excuse me for interrupting. Is there a possibility that you could make the slides a slideshow, just for ease of seeing them?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
How's that? Good. Let me see. Okay. In terms of membership, sorry, I'm trying to move the video around so I can actually see the slide I'm talking to now. In terms of membership, I think someone's still got their microphone open. If you just want to mute that, it just makes it better for everyone. I think that this graph kind of speaks for itself. But I think it's an important graph for us to start looking at. And this is something that the board is intending to do more often, to share more of the data that we have about our members and to use this more when we are making decisions. What you'll notice is, well, there's one thing to notice, and I'm a little biased because I'm in Australia, and okay, I'll say it. Look at this. Look at the Australians leading the way here. And of course, let's not forget our trans-Tasman brothers and sisters. So Australians and New Zealanders together make up about a quarter of our association, which is great. And then if you consider that in a per capita basis, it's quite significant. However, I mean, I don't want to get into parochial debates, but I think the other thing that this graph tells us is about what's missing, or rather who's missing. We had a conference in Milan in 2014, right? And we have one Italian member. Now, there's something wrong there, I believe. And if you have Italian colleagues working in bullying, you need to get in touch with them and try and bring them back to our association. Of course, it's not just a story about Italy, it's a story about Germany and various other countries. So I want to underscore to you all with this kind of data that we all need to be reaching out to the people that we work with, the people that we know around the world, and bringing them in to our association if at all possible. Bring them into our events, not just as members, but bring them to our events. And I'm sure that once they join in our events, they'll want to become members, because that's really how our association works. I think it's also important to note, it's not on the slide here, but it's important to note that our membership is heavily made up of people who are not employed in tertiary education organisations. So our membership is comprised of people who are not working for universities. There are a lot of people who are working for universities, but there are actually a majority who are not. And I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind. And that's going to come up again later in our agenda with some of the other motions that we have on the agenda. Sorry, I'm trying to go ahead. There we are. In terms of the board activities, here are our current board members pictured at our face-to-face meeting in London. We're very lucky to have such a great active board in our association. It's been a very busy few years, and I just wanted to summarise some of the things that we've been talking about and some of the decisions that we've been making. We have considered and refined the assessment criteria that we use for events, and that was in response to feedback from some members, and those refined criteria will be available when we start asking for bids for new events into the future. We did have criteria. I think it's important for those to be updated as we go, and they have been. We made a decision to increase our membership fees. Now, I know that this may be alarming for some people, but I wanted to provide some context on this. Our membership fees, firstly, have never ever increased since our association began back in 2008. We've never had an increase in our membership fees. We have, of course, had a greater diversification in our membership fees, such that we've made it easier for people who are students. So they've got a reduced, this is not something that the current board decided. This is something that's happened over several years. that students and people who are unwaged and people from developing countries have a significant reduction in that membership fee. But we have decided to increase that for regular members from £60 to £70 and to increase it by £5 for those other categories. This was a decision that was taken after serious consideration of the association's finances and where we need to go into the future. I also want to note that membership is our only revenue stream, and that puts us at risk. And it's something that, as an association, we need to deal with. I also want to note that this was meant to come into effect earlier this year, but the board decided to pause that. I think that's the appropriate decision to take, given the events going on in the world at the moment. So when this will start will be something that will be considered by the new board, but I don't expect it happening this year. Another important thing we've decided to do is to set the event registration costs centrally. This seems like a very minor change, but it's actually very important. This will mean that at each one of our events, the registration fees will be set in advance and reviewed centrally in advance. It gives certainty to people who are putting their hand up to host an event so that they don't have to magically pick a registration figure out of the air, but they have something that is going to be used for them in order that they can budget for that event. So it assists with planning, and it also ensures consistency between events. I think that's very important. We don't want some events to be extremely expensive and other events to be extremely inexpensive, which then, moves the number of people around somewhat artificially. And we need our events to be financially viable. If our association is going to continue, our events have to be financially viable. And this is one of the many steps that we need to take in that direction. Some more of the things that the board's been doing, some general principles about ways we've been working. We are using the data that we have more consistently to inform our decisions and reporting on that data. And an example of that is reporting to the General Assembly about who are our members and where do they come from and what do they look like. I think that's really important for us to do and the responsible thing to do. We've been using subgroups and working groups where necessary, and I imagine that's going to continue. We have a lot of work to do in our association, and we rely on some of you to be part of that and to use your experience and your expertise and your commitment to our association to assist us to do that. So be prepared to be called on, I guess, is my message there. And the other thing that we're doing generally is we're improving our policies, procedures, and documentation. This is part of succession planning. The board has spent a lot of time figuring out what did we used to do and how do we do this last time. And we really need to have those systems and documentation so that it can be smooth running and consistent for everyone. And so that's something that we're working on. We'd planned to do a survey of membership. That was happening in the first half of this year, but you all know the things that have happened in the first half of this year. We now plan to do that in the second half of this year. And I'll talk a little more about that. I don't believe that we've had a survey of our membership ever before. And so this is a way of getting some feedback. We're, 10, 12 years old now as an association. It's time to get some feedback about what people want their association to be and where they want it to go. We've got several governance and constitutional change proposals. Some of them are being dealt with at this meeting, and we'll talk more about those. And we're developing a strategic plan. That was meant to be done again at the start of this year. It's been held up, shall we say. But I am going to talk to you a little bit about the draft of that strategic plan. And that's something that we'll be asking people to feedback on in the survey later in the year. I think having a strategic plan is really important for us because it helps us focus on the things that we want to do, but also to figure out what we're not going to do. So what are we about and what are we not about? And I think that'll really help the board and all the other people that assist the board to really know where we should be focusing our efforts and our investments. So I'll come back to issues of the strategic plan shortly. I'm going to spend a few moments talking about conferences. As we said at the very beginning, it's really sad that we've not been able to meet this year in Dubai as planned. And I know many of you were very much looking forward to meeting in Dubai. It was going to be a really interesting environment that our association has never been to before. And I think it provided us with so many opportunities. And so it's very sad that we've not been able to do that. It would have been just the week before last. I want to thank Alison, Alistair and Mashid, who are here with us, I believe, on the meeting. I want to thank them for their hard work as the local organising committee. They put a huge amount of work into this conference already and continue to put in a huge amount of work to this conference. And I want to thank them for the hard work that they've already done and will continue to do, and for their flexibility as well. And I know it's really disappointing for them, and I'm disappointed that we can't be there. The board has met frequently, almost weekly, in the lead up to, well, not in the lead up to, while dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. It is the curveball of all curveballs, I believe. I want to thank the board for their consistent effort on this. We've been considering all kinds of scenarios, and we announced the postponement of the conference in March, on the 24th of March, in order to give people the best information that we could at the time. It was then a situation that was changing every day, literally every day, and it still is a situation that's changing every day. It continues to be a situation of great uncertainty, as you all know, and you've all had your own experience of that and continue to have your own experience of that. The way we've been thinking about it is in terms of implications on health, implications on travel, and implications on economics. All of those things, as you know, are affected. And even if the effects on one of those are neutralised, shall we say, the effects on the others may still be having an effect. And that is the information with which the board has been making its decisions, in consultation, of course, with the local organising committee in Dubai. So we have a postponed event planned for March. That event may not occur as planned. But at the moment, we are looking at the ways in which we're making preparations for how that might work, should it be a virtual event in March. I want to assure you, though, we have considered many, many scenarios. We've been through them, all of them. I believe all of them. We've been pretty diligent with this, and we're really doing our best in this really tricky, difficult time. But I also want to encourage you to think about this in a positive way as well, which is what I'm trying to do too. It's really unfortunate, and if we're not able to be there face to face, that's really unfortunate. But there are opportunities there too. Just like for this General Assembly, there are opportunities for engagement and involvement that we have never, ever, ever had before. and realizing those opportunities is something that we can really do and be innovative with. And so I encourage you all to be a part of that. In terms of future events, we don't anticipate holding masterclasses in 2021. I think that's a responsible decision. It's very hard to plan anything at the moment. So we won't be holding masterclasses in 2021. We do plan to hold our 2022 conference as scheduled. The board wanted to try as best we could to maintain the structures of our association. Also, being open and frank with you all, our events lead to increases in membership. Our association runs on membership. So we have to have regular events in order to ensure that our association keeps going. So that does factor into our decision making as well. So we plan to hold our 2022 conference as scheduled. Normally at the General Assembly, before that conference, we announce the details of that conference. We will not be doing that at this time. So we won't be announcing the 2022 details now. I know everyone wants to know what the future event is. That's always fun and exciting, but we won't be doing that for a few reasons. We never do that. We never advertise 2 events at once. We'll still be having an event in March 2021, and it's just the wrong thing to do. And it's also really disrespectful if we were to announce a further event when another one hasn't occurred yet. So at the moment, all of our attention and all of our focus is on the event that's going to be happening in March 2021. And I'm asking you all to really get behind that and participate and be part of it. And there'll be plenty more information about that coming as soon as we can, as soon as we have that those details sorted out. I'm sure you appreciate that it is a fluid situation still. So I believe this is my last slide. I've been talking for quite a while. I'm sorry. This is our draft strategic plan. It's the skeleton of it. It's not the details, but I wanted to share some of it with you because parts of this will be coming to you for your feedback later on. So we have strategic areas and enablers, and they're around membership, events, evidence-based practice and workplace engagement, and the enablers of admin and operations. There's quite a bit of work to be done in each of these, and there'll be sub-goals or sub-areas set up in each of these as we go forward. And so if you'd like to start thinking about how these things might work, I would invite you to do that ahead of further consultation coming in the next few months. And that's a really important way that everyone can be involved in shaping our association going forward. And that's the end of my report. I'm sorry it took so long. There's a lot to tell you about. We've been doing a lot of things. We've been very busy, and thank you very much to all of the board members who I've relied on very heavily over the last 2 years. I'm happy to take questions, Chair, briefly if we have time.
Yeah, just if you would like to ask a question of Carlo, can I ask you to go into the participants logo at the bottom of your Zoom screen and raise your hand? Leanne, I see your hand is raised. Would you like to ask a question of Carlo?
I was simply using the reaction button to clap Carlo's report that he apologised for being long. It wasn't to ask a question.
Wonderful, thank you, thank you. If you could just click lower hand, then that would be wonderful. Thank you.
It's not bad.
So if you click on where it says participants 38, you should have a dialog box open.
I had raised my hand. I was using a different button altogether. It disappears after a few seconds.
Okay. Thank you very much, Leanne. Okay, there are no raised hands in the participants box at the moment. We now have 38 participants with us at the moment, which is wonderful. So I would like to thank Carlo for his President's report and now move on to agenda item number 6, which is the election results. These will be presented now by Charlotte, and Charlotte will also be proposing motion 3 during her report as well. Over to you, Charlotte. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Good evening, everybody, and good night, everybody. Lovely to see you all, and thank you for giving me the space to present the election results. Can I first give some thanks, mainly for my election committee co-worker, Miniki Puelsi, sorry. And Miniki and I have done this very much together. Miniki mostly does the administration and is absolutely excellent. So thank you. We are both retiring happily. As part of the election, we needed to also get a new election committee. Now, the focus for many people for the election committee is actually the board members, and indeed that is very important, of course. I thought I would actually start on the committees as well. So in terms of the election committee, Miniki and I have been doing it now for several cycles, and I'm delighted to say that we were approached by Shane, who has been helping us from the board, because the election committee have people helping them have a nominated representative from the board who is really the link person, and Shane has done a really terrific job. So a second set of thanks to Shane for being the link person into the board. And Shane has, in her retirement from the board, has decided to cross the threshold and actually be part of the election committee, which is fantastic because she has good knowledge. And the other person who has applied and is Wendy Bloisey, who's from the UK, who's just waved at you. Wendy is what you need for the election committee is definitely to come to the conferences, because you have to talk to people. And so both Shane and Wendy are marvellous conference attendees. Shane is a practitioner, Wendy is an academic, and therefore you have a good balance as well. One of the things that our job is to do is to go around and really talk to people and talk to them about the work of the IAWBH and encourage colleagues to serve. There isn't a magic group in the IAWBH that does the work, it's us. And so to help new members especially realize that there is no back office, it's us, and if they can serve the IAWBH, that keeps us going. That is really the job of the election committee. So that what we do is, if we talk to lots of people and we're constantly promoting the IAWBH, what we want to do is actually, when there's a call for elections, that people are putting their hand up and saying, yes, I will do my bit. And that's obviously what we're doing at the conferences, and I'm quite sure that Shane and Wendy will be excellent at undertaking that work. Governance and audit is the other committee that we have been we are concerned with and have members here who are IAWBH members. These are people who are able to step back and, for the board, examine not just the financial audit, but it's actually really an organisational audit, and now an increasing role of critiquing governance. So with Niels, this is a 4-year role, so ideally you actually have people leapfrogging each other. And we were able to do that this year, and Helge is retiring and has done a fantastic job. I know Niels will be able to say that. And Niels is remaining in post, and Pramila de Cruz, who, as we all know, is a past president, has agreed to join governance and audit. And I think that Niels and Pramila will be a terrific team. and be both constructive and critical of the committee, and I'm sure will be terrific, make a great contribution. Now I'm going to move to the board. We had 3 members step back, and there is a rotation on the board, and we therefore were seeking 3 members. Now, in addition to the main board, we always have 2 people who are in reserve, and these substitute board members are terribly important, because we are of a group where you have a president and 6 board members. We are also quite often of an age where things happen to us, and so significant illness, caring responsibilities, etc. can happen, and therefore the reserve board members have generally been used. Interestingly, Carlo, I don't think you've used them at all in this particular cycle, but it is important to have 2 reserve board members. Now, these are people who are effectively saying, I will be in the background and I am prepared to serve. The issue is really important, because when you are a board member, you absolutely must put in time. It is a genuine commitment, and it is not a job just to have on your CV. If you don't do the serving bit and you don't actually put the time in, actually the membership suffers, and what happens is your colleague board members pick up your job, etc. So we are really careful on the election committee to explain to people this is a very serious role. Nice things happen to people who serve on the IAWBH board in terms of their career. It is a good thing to have sitting there. So we actually had 2 people. We're looking for two reserve board members, and we actually had 2 people who said that is what they would prefer. And Loic Le Rouge, who I can actually see on my screen, applied, and Loic was doing this in the last cycle, and thank you very much, Loic. It's almost like something that sits on your shoulder, waiting to be waiting for the call. And also we have Mary Esau, who we're really pleased to take on board. Mary, I'm sorry I can't see you on my board, my screen, but I hope you're saying hello. And so what is particularly helpful about Mary is that she's our first person within the serving community, I think, from the African continent. So Mary, thank you, fantastic, and I really hope that those numbers are going to go up from your part of the world. Then on to the main board, we actually only had 2 people apply for the 3 positions. And this was Margaret Hodgins and Susan from, sorry, I'm just getting stuck with my own piece of paper here, and Susan Johnson from Washington University. So we have, and thank you very much to both of you for applying, but we have 1 position that remains empty. We also actually have a bigger problem. In fact, in the whole of these elections, there has only been one practitioner who's applied for any post, and that is Shane, who has served this community first as a reserve board member, then as a full board, as a reserve board member for 2 years. Then she served as a full board member for 8 years, and now she's stepping back and she's serving now on the election committee. And actually, we have no practitioners. That's it. So we have a problem. It's not a problem that I could solve, and I think actually within our group, we need, if we are to be a blend of practitioners and academics, we actually need to confront this. There is a real issue. I have sat with, over the years, and there have been many, I have sat with practitioners who've been furious that they cannot be president. It is in the Constitution that they cannot be president. Now, it could be that that puts practitioners off. That they feel as if there is an implicit message that they're second-class citizens. I have certainly had people talk to me about that. And I have had I have personally made enormous efforts to try and engage with practitioners. There is an extra issue that within any board, and when you're looking as the election committee, you're looking to balance the board. You're trying to balance the board in a place on the base of where they come from. So, for example, the beginning boards were mostly Northern Hemisphere members. In the more recently, and particularly having got the conference in Australasia, it was fantastic because the Australasian group sort of rocketed, and now we have a board that has 5 members. The exiting board has 5 members who are based in Australasia, and actually you could argue, well, it's gone a long way that way. So all the time you're trying to balance it, and you're trying to balance gender. And what Minik and I, having done it for so long, what we would see as the perfect board is 2 from the Northern Hemisphere, 2 from the Southern Hemisphere, and 2 from the middle. Okay? So that's what, and you balance out of that gender, at least. And ideally, you also balance economic background, because you can't have, you know, people who have fantastic budgets making decisions for people who really don't. So we require a last board member, and actually this really should be a practitioner because we have 6 academics. So for this reason, I would like to propose the motion, which is that we hold open the IAWBH elections if we expect that we we'll need to wait till next week to actually get a call, because obviously we've got to wait for the voting, so that then we would tell people about the election next week and then hold it open. I would say at least 7 days. Personally, I would like it to be 10 days to include 2 weekends. Maybe you could take that back to the main screen, Carlo. All I've got is the election. Oh, hang on. No, I'm just trying to reduce the slideshow. The other issue, I'll just talk while this is happening. The other issue that's also I need to say is that when you observe the board as it stands and you go into the future, they're reckoning that we're delighted to have Susan and Margaret on the board. They are both from the Northern Hemisphere. So when we're looking for a practitioner, if we are looking to balance this board, it would be better if the practitioner or the practitioners who were going into the election came from either the middle of the world or the Southern Hemisphere. Because as you are on the election committee, you're looking to go further forwards. Okay.
Jane?
That's okay. So, Carlo, you're back.
Yes. So I believe those slides are sharing again, Charlotte. So that's
okay. That's
the
great.
motion on the screen. So Jane,
Yes.
I don't know if Charlotte, if you'd like to amend that motion then?
Yes, I would. I would like to suggest that we make the call open for a period of 10 days.
Okay, so
Oops.
So before we go to voting on the motion, we need to agree on the change to 10 days. So I will ask Carlo and Shane first if you would like to speak to the change and give your agreement or other.
I'm happy with that change. I'm trying to make it available to you on the screen so we can see what we're agreeing to change to. I'm sorry. But I'd be okay with 10 or 14, whichever you wish.
And as a member of the new election committee, I'd be very happy to have longer.
So my understanding of this is that this would mean that there is a period in which people can nominate, which is 10 days. And after that time, should an election be necessary, then the election committee can arrange to have that election. It doesn't have to be that it occurs in 10 days, but that the closing date for nominations is 10 days. So that's
Carlo, that's exactly right. And I think that also it will be 10 days from the time the call goes out.
Sure.
And I would imagine that the call, assuming that obviously we need a full feedback from this meeting, if the call goes out next week, then you actually have 2 weekends, which is the key thing. You always need 2 weekends in the middle for people to sort themselves out. And can I emphasize that we do need to think about the balance of the board, and we are definitely looking for people who are from the middle of the world, not the northern or southern hemisphere. Well, not the northern hemisphere. We're looking for people who are based in the southern or middle of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. So, Carlo, what I'll ask you to do in Slido then, obviously the motion as it was communicated before the meeting has been amended slightly. Could I ask you to go into Slido and to pop those amendments in? In order to vote on a motion, first of all, we need to agree on the amendment and then agree on the amended motion. So the amendment would need to be agreed upon first. Also, I would like to call on a seconder for the motion as well. So in the participants, oh, Shane has her hand up.
That was just a second.
That was a second, yes.
Shane probably can't be the second as the secretary, so Sarah has seconded.
Sarah has it. I beg your pardon. Yes, Carlo, of course. So, Carlo, are you able to put those amendments into Slido?
Yes.
While you're doing that, Carlo, I've noticed in Slido that we don't have a full representation of the members who are present at the meeting. It looked at as I could see it, that there are around about 24 or 25 members who had registered to vote, and we have 39 participants with us.
That's right. Some people have joined the meeting late, Jane. So
yes.
If you've joined the meeting late, you need to go to Slido and use your membership number if you're going to vote.
Yep. So go to slido.com. Bevan has in the chat put the code capital K 299 to enter. And as Carlo mentioned, you'll need to pop in your membership number and your name to be included in the voting process. So if you could, if you haven't done that as yet, and you could do that while Carlo's getting those motions up, that would be wonderful.
So that's ready in Slido, Jane. You may just need to get an agreement on the change to the motion. And I'd suggest just doing that by a show of hands in this meeting. Okay.
Can I ask you all, where you can see the participants button, can I ask you to raise your hand to agree to this motion, or to the amendment of the motion? Yes, to the amendment. Okay. So I'm just scrolling down. Sorry, just trying to count the hands up. 1, 2, 3. We have 18 who have raised their hand under the participants tab at the moment. If you haven't had the opportunity or gone into that participants tab yet to put your hand up, could I ask you to? We need more than 50%. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see where you can mute and stop your video, and then there is a button that says participants, and it has a little 40 next to it. If you click on that, it will open a dialog box, and you can choose raise your hand from there.
I think we have a majority, Jane. There's 15 people who have not raised their hand.
Yes. Thank you, Carlo. I was trying to count them, but the screen keeps moving on me. So thank you for doing that.
People still figuring out how to raise their hand.
Yes.
So I think we'll go ahead and I'll put that amendment in Slido for you to vote in Slido.
Lovely. Thank you, Carlo. So if you can go into Slido now. Carlo's, the amended motion should appear momentarily.
It's there now.
So just to read out that motion again with the changes, it's motion 3 that a call for one further IAWBH board position be made for a period of 10 days after the nomination period is announced, and that after that period, an election be held if there are 2 or more candidates. So at present, we have 22 who have voted in favour of the motion. I have abstained because obviously being the chair of the meeting. We have 41 attendants participating, so the motion is carried. Of course, people who are not at the meeting will be able to also vote later as well. So the motion has been carried for now. And with that, I would like to say thank you to Charlotte for presenting the election results and the report, and move to agenda item number 7, which is the Treasurer's report. And I'd like to invite Stephen to speak to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Good day, everyone. Can you hear me? Oh, good. I lost my voice or my sound connection. Thanks, Carlo, or whoever doing changing the slide. Look, I have good news for the membership. As you can see on the screen, we are doing very well. Altogether, we have about £31,000 sitting in 3 main accounts. Oops.
Sorry.
It's all right. I have to learn how to memorize. So we have 3 accounts. We make up of £31,000 in the bank. PayPal, as you can see down there, is the bank account that we receive our membership dues from. So normally that's where we collect your membership fees, and then we transfer that into our operational account, which is the account with 44398. That's in Norwegian currency, then we convert to sterling. If I have the next slide, please, Carlo. Then I'm going to present a number of reports, where the first one is basically outlining our revenue and expenditures from the period where I took over Treasurer up till the end of September. Then I'll present the budget for the other 2 years. As you can see, we have been receiving our membership dues. That's the main source of income, with a very small amount in interest earned from the Norwegian bank account. Our main categories of expenditure, they are basically conference related, and we spend that on a London masterclass catering and travel costs. We make a slight loss there because we had to pay for presenters, one particular presenter from Australia to London. So while the remaining were from UK, so the cost was much cheaper there. Then we also pay out Dubai conference fund. There's also £7,500 being paid for board meeting, where not every board members access that funding. Some of us we had conference funding where we used that to fund our own way from Australia to the UK. Then the rest are quite small amount in terms of paying for the bookkeeper and the website administration and bank fees. So as you can see in the 2018 and 2019, we make a slight loss of about £3,000. So the masterclass in Israel that was held this year, they did not access the 3,000 seat fund despite being budgeted for that amount. So that's why there was no transactions representing the masterclass in Israel. So if I could have the next slide, please, Carlo. Then this is where I'm presenting some actuals and some budgeted amount for the year 2020. As you can see, 2020, if our renewals are continuing to come in the second half of this year, we should have an income of about £10,000. In comparison with only £4,500 of expenditure because there was no Dubai conference in 2020. So if I could have the next slide, please, Carlo. So this one here is presenting next year, 2021's budget. Again, our main source of income is from membership, where there's about, with the budget increase of about 10% growth, there's about £11,000. And then this is the year where we're going to pay out for the 2022 conference seat fund. And we also have agreed to give a conference scholarship for students to attend that conference. And the board also in prior years have agreed on a contingency amount of around £2,000 in there. So as you can see, there's a very balanced budget for 2021. The next slide, please. And that's my final slide. As you can see, 2022 is very similar. The only thing in here that we have budgeted for is the conference scholarship for the 2022 conference. All the other expenditure were as per previous years. And so 2022, we have more budgeted income compared to expenditure. So in all, in summary, we do have a balanced budget every year. There's a slight fluctuation in how much is coming in due to the timing differences, especially this year in terms of our conference that was postponed to next year. Thank you, everyone. Happy to answer any question.
Many thanks, Stephen. If you have a question on Stephen's report, could I please ask you to go into that participants tab and raise your hand? We just have time for a short question. Joe Brown, you have your hand up if you'd like to take yourself off mute and ask a question to Stephen.
Hi, Stephen. I've actually got two questions. One is you don't seem to have any fees for a meeting for the board in 2022. But actually, I just wondered how feasible is a year-on-year increase in membership, 10%, considering COVID-19 and the economic issues we're facing.
Hi, Joe. Good to see you again.
Andrew.
I'll try my best to answer. Carlo would have a better explanation there. Look, with the because of due to COVID-19, obviously we have been budgeting, making a very conservative, sort of expectations in terms of the recruitment of new members. And I think going back to what Carlo was saying earlier on, the association really needs all of us to go out and recruit new members, and we really need to find new ways of connecting with new members, or even our membership body, in terms of having virtual events, perhaps like the US Academy of Management, where their conferences are now going into virtual. But yeah, I think that's a bigger conversation in terms of where are we going to find our members. And I think, if I'm not wrong, in 2022, we have decided not to budget any face-to-face meeting, if I'm not wrong. So I'll leave Carlo to provide a more detailed answer to that.
That's almost correct, because 2022 is a conference year. The board's face-to-face conference is always, the board's face-to-face meeting in a conference year is always at the conference.
That's right,
So
yes.
the face-to-face conference is only in the non-conference year. So that's why that's not an expense every year.
That's correct. Now I remember. Thanks, Carlo, for refreshing my memory.
Sure.
So does that answer your question, Joe?
Yes, thank you.
Nels has just made a comment in the chat box saying
yes.
button 2021, Stephen.
2021. Carlo, can you flick to 2021? 2021. No, there's no face-to-face meeting in 2021. I think we might be doing a virtual meeting. That's why it's not budgeted for.
We also have it because we're meeting in March.
I thought that we did budget for this. We may have to, that may be an error. We may have to look at that again.
Okay, so thank you. So it must have taken out by mistake.
Perhaps it's elsewhere and not listed properly. Good pickup, Niels.
I think the presumption was because you're potentially meeting face-to-face at the conference, as Stallers just mentioned.
That would have been
in
the presumption. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
We also have Penny, who's put her hand up for a quick question as well.
Hi, just a quick question from me. The conference seed fund, is that expected to be recouped at the conference, assuming conferences are held?
I believe that's a tradition. Yeah, that's how it's done. Because I don't have the history in the past. So can Carlo add to that?
That is normally what happens, yes. But we're in a bit of uncertainty at the moment in terms of what's going to happen with events.
Sure. I guess it would just change how the budget looks if
Sure.
you're expecting that £5,000 back again.
Well, we're either expecting it to be spent on an event and or any profits of that event to be fed back to the association. But we haven't budgeted or expected profit from an event this year.
Of course. Carlo, just while we're on that subject, and I haven't seen the budgets before, did we normally make a small profit on the conferences?
It varies. It varies.
Okay.
And one of the things that we are moving forward with is trying to make sure that events do run at some kind of profit because they need to.
Yeah. Even if it's a small profit.
Even if it's a small profit, we need more than breaking even.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Penny. I don't see any other hands up, but I do note that there has been a comment in the chat from Leanne. So that the particular comment would be that she'd be surprised if the virtual event would not cost anything. Obviously, the technology, professional facilitator, moderators, and things like that. So obviously, that's something that we'll know more about, or the board will know more about, as we know what's actually going to be happening with the conference.
That's right. That's right.
Correct.
Wonderful. No other hands are up for questions for Stephen. I'd like to just thank Stephen for presenting those figures and move now on to agenda item number 8. This is the governance report, and Helge will be presenting the governance report. Over to you, Helge.
Thank you. It's now showed on the screen. I hope you can read it. It's a bit tedious to process here because tradition is that one of the auditors will read it. I will do that because we read at different speed and it may be, so bear with me. The audit reports cover the activities of the IAWBH board for the period between the organization's conferences in 2018 and June 2020 to coincide with the planned conference in Dubai in 2020, which now is postponed until March 2021. The report's primary goal is to monitor and assess whether the board has acted in accordance with the rules of the IAWBH constitution and represented the members' wishes as expressed in the constitution and at the General Assembly. For this purpose, we have reviewed the minutes of the IAWBH elected board meetings for the conference period, as well as information available about IAWBH membership and its development during the period, together with the key activities as listed within the IAWBH constitution document, including its financial activities. Finally, we have made an overall evaluation of the activities undertaken by the board in the light of the requirements of the Constitution. According to the IAWBH Constitution, the board is responsible for operational activities of the association and in charge of and accountable for the financial resources of the association. The Constitution defined the key activities as follows: coordination of the conference in collaboration with the local organizers, facilitation of the sharing of research and evidence-based practice through means such as internet site, newsletter, workshop, seminar, courses, etc., and networking groups, as well as provision of collaboration opportunities for researchers and practitioners. Board meetings. In terms of volume and frequency of meetings, the board has met a total of 19 times in the period. The board met face-to-face in Bordeaux following the 2018 conference, and in London on 26 to 28 of August 2019 in connection with a masterclass at Birkbeck University. The remaining meetings were undertaken virtually by Zoom. Due to the short time scale, the minutes from the last board meeting on 8th of June were not available for the auditors. All minutes were very well organized, providing a good overview of activities and issues discussed and action taken and noted. Then activities within the period. As in previous years, every member of the board has had their own dedicated area of responsibility, a practice which seemed to work well, and with all members participating very actively. But as in the previous period, high levels of workload have led to discussion about how to decrease the load and burden on board members so they can fully perform their duties for the association. As part of this discussion, the board has agreed to outsource certain time-consuming administrative activities and tasks, including web administration. The need to outsource some activities should also be seen in light of the board's ambitious outlook and visions for the IAWBH, with debates about how to become more strategic in its operation at the heart of many board discussion. This includes ideas how to systematically grow the membership, both quantitatively as well as geographically. Some issues have been on the agenda at almost every board meeting. These include the 2020 IAWBH conferences in Dubai, masterclass classes, finances, technology, SIGs and their activity levels, newsletter production, strategic development, and issues associated with constitutional change. Naturally, the biannual conference had been central to many debates and discussion, with the extraordinary situation caused by COVID-19 providing particular challenges for the board, leading to the decision to postpone the 2020 Dubai conference and the need to carry out the General Assembly virtually. Plans and preparation for 2022 conference are also well on the way, with a contract signed with a favored organization who are being aided by a conference manual developed by the board. 2 masterclasses facilitated by local organizers have successfully taken place in the period at 2 different locations, London and Tiberias, Israel. Considerable effort has focused on SIGs with plan to reduce their number based on membership interest and possibly rebrand them as workshop in time for the postponed 2021 conference. In terms of technology, the board has established a working group to deal with social media and media challenges with membership external to the board, but supported by a working group manual, or protocol. A further update and professionalization of the website is also near completion. The renewal of membership fees has been an ongoing issue since the GA in 2016, with the stated aim of making the membership number more stable and establishing a system which is seen to offer incentives for membership with respect to conference participation. The board has also discussed how to encourage more members to stand for the vacant offices of the association, as in 2018, no formal election has been needed, with 1 place on the board still being vacant. To address this and other issues concerning the membership, a member survey is currently at the planning stage and will take place early in the next board cycle. Some notes of caution. As indicated above, informed by discussion around efficiency, sustainability and succession planning, the board has embarked upon an agenda of constitutional change. While it is to the board's credit that as part of this, it has sought the views of some former members, we would nevertheless warn against making changes to the constitution which could weaken the organization's defenses, potentially making IAWBH more vulnerable to internal divisions in the longer term and with anticipated damage to its public standing. In terms of financial administration, whilst the previous procedure, which requires 7 signatures to move money between accounts, was cumbersome and likely in need of change, the board's decision to reduce this to a requirement of only 2 signatures seems rather too radical, leaving the organizations more vulnerable to financial mismanagement or loss. Although Nils Magerø suggested this, he also is in favor for having more signatures, and we suggest 3. The account for 2019 has not been finished by our bookkeeper, Jorunn Hylland, as she requires that missing invoices have to be in place. The board is working on this, but the bookkeeper will not be able to have the account ready for the General Assembly as the invoices are not in place yet. The 2018 account has been finished by our bookkeeper, but has not been audited yet. We recommend that the board make guidelines for filing and auditing. Finally, the decision to hold a masterclass in Israel not long after the previous board agreed on Dubai as location for the 2020 conference led to an intervention in 2019 from a group of long-standing founding members expressing their disquiet at this decision. It is of concern that the board has decided to remove ethics of a country as a tiebreaker in decision about bids for future conferences or events due to the subjectivity of this criterion. We suggest that the board for decision on venue country should make a reflection on why they choose to go or not go for the country in question. We think it is of importance as all members have the possibility to attend IAWBH designated events and feel safe and welcome. Overall assessment. Notwithstanding the caveats expressed above, it's our view that the board has carried out this business within the parameters of the confines of the IAWBH constitution, and we conclude that the board fully represents the interest of the wider membership, having as a collective put a lot of effort into working together and contribute to further strengthening and professionalizing IAWBH building on the foundation laid in previous years. In conclusion, the board and its members have undertaken their role very competently, continuing to consolidate and further strengthening IAWBH. Special thanks go to Carlo Caponecchia, who has served as the association's president for the last 2 years. Helge Hoel and Nils Magerøy. Thank you.
Many thanks, Helge, for your wonderful report there. Can I ask if anybody would like to ask a question or raise a comment on the governance report? Could I please ask you to raise your hand? Evelyn. Evelyn, your hand is up. Do you have your microphone on mute?
Sorry, Jane, while we're waiting, I believe Joe was first in any case with her hand up.
I think Joe and Penny were from the last motion. Sorry, from Stephen's. Am I correct in that, Joe and Penny? Just to double check with you both.
Yes, that's correct, Joe. Thanks. I don't have a question on the governance.
So can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Evelyn. Thank you.
Fine. So I was one of the people who suggested the idea to the Israelis, and we had a very successful masterclass. I think it was fantastic. So I'm not sure what the ethical concerns were. I don't understand it.
Okay, now I do not want to go into a long discussion here at all. I just want to say that the issues that were raised were particularly regarding that there were restrictions both in Dubai and in Israel. In this case, Dubai is not part of this board governance period because that was the previous board, but on restrictions on access to Israel, meaning that not necessarily all members could attend due to restriction for traveling to Israel. And that was one thing, a restriction we think should be open to all people. So we thought that was an important issue. The other issue is the issue around human rights. And in terms of course, an issue which people take different views on, but that we note that Israel have been accused a number of times, and particularly since we didn't see any issues around the Palestinians raised and their experience potentially of bullying in Israeli workplaces, there was a view that also should need to be taken into account. But the thing is here is that we think that this issue need to be, the point is that it should be part of a decision. And I hope now we're not getting a long discussion about Israel. I think that would be wrong to have here now, but try to avoid that.
Well, as far as I was concerned, I thought there were travel restrictions to Dubai as well.
Yes, exactly, there were.
So it's both ways, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm Jewish and I'm proud of that. And I think it was a wonderful conference. And I know no country is perfect, but I just don't know why we're in a position to make decisions like that, rather than to say, here's an opportunity to talk about workplace bullying, to empower the locals, whether they're Palestinian, Jewish, whatever, Christian, and help everyone understand what bullying and harassment are all about. I can't see why we should get involved in, you know, he's right, he's wrong, she's right, she's wrong, whatever. Because I don't think we have all the facts. We're only going by what the media tells us, and that is very limited, as anybody knows.
Can I just say one thing? I only want to say here, this is, I take what you're saying. I just think that when we are using a location which there may be different views on, it would be very useful, but also a part of the agenda for a meeting like in Israel, that they raise the issues, that part of it, of the people who actually live in Israel, which are of course the Israelis and the Jewish people, but there are also other people living in the area, that their concern, for example, with respect to workplace bullying is addressed. And this is extremely important in the context of Dubai. For example, that the human rights abuses which come up very recently, for example, where people's passport is been, for example, in the prison service sector, everybody worked there, their passport is taken from them when they work. It's a huge human rights abuse, and it's a bullying in its own right because people can't speak up in the workplace. When we are in such a setting, it's important that we also raise the experiences people have of bullying in that context. So I think that's important that in the context of Israel, yes, you also raise the issue, how do Palestinians, as part of a wider agenda.
Yeah, I agree with you. Sorry.
Evelyn, I do apologise. I will need to wrap up this particular agenda item right now, but I do invite the both of you to continue this conversation outside of the General Assembly. There's some very, very good points being raised by both sides, and I'm sure you'd like to continue afterwards, but we do need to move on. So I do appreciate your points of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Helgi, again for presenting your report. I'd like to move now on to agenda item number 9. There are a variety of constitutional amendments that Carlo will be discussing now, and several motions that he will be asking us all to, or you all to vote on and also to second. Handing over to you, Carlo, now. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane, and thank you, Helga, for the governance report. Whoops, I'm sorry. Trying to see the screen as I show it to you all as well. So there are several proposals for constitutional change. I'll try to lead us through this as quickly as possible and provide some context. You would all have received the discussion paper on constitutional change. The first item around having a standardised financial year for membership renewal, this itself is not actually a constitutional change, but there are elements of the Constitution that bear on this issue. The reason that the board would like to move to standardising the financial year is so that we have a period of the year when everyone renews their membership. At the moment, people renew their membership at all different times of the year based on when they join the association. It really does help with finances and planning to have people renew at a similar time of the year, say within a particular month each year. It also helps us to remind people and advertise that membership renewal is coming up. So this is a really very useful tool for us to ensure that we have a predictable set of funds going forward. So that's contained within the first motion, 4.1. I might discuss the other issues that bear on that. At the moment, the Constitution has one sentence in it that complicates that idea, which is that those people who were not members of the association, who attended the conference, the Constitution dictates that they then receive membership for 12 months. That's problematic, given that our conference can be at different times of the year, slightly different months, and it's problematic if we want to move to a standardised period of membership, which might be, say, renewals happening in March. So hopefully it's clear which part of this is constitutional and which part of the Constitution is frustrating this idea. So we have firstly a motion that the financial year for membership be standardised, which I'm happy to talk about and take a vote on, and then take the constitutional vote. Is that okay, Jane, if we do it in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Carlo. So
I'd propose that, Jane, 4.1, that the financial year for membership be standardised.
Can I have a seconder for that motion? Alison Ballard has seconded the motion. I'll invite you all now to go to Slido.
Would anyone like to speak against it, Jane?
Sorry, beg your pardon, yes. Would anyone like to speak against? I have no hands speaking up to speak against Carlo. Could I invite you to go to Slido now and to pop the motion up there? We have, I think, 28 members who are here at the General Assembly who have registered on Slido. If you haven't yet and you would like to take part in the voting now, please go to slido.com. The code for getting into slido.com is K for kilo 299, and you'll just need your member ID and your name to start voting.
It really would be good to have as many people vote as possible, please. It's really hard to know. Please don't just be in the meeting and not vote. If we were live in Dubai right now, you'd be raising your hands or not raising your hands. So please go and vote.
But in Slido, don't you have to have the hashtag before the K, Carlo?
Yes, it automatically puts it there, Niels.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Anne, could you give us that code again, please?
Yes, it's K for kilo, capital K,
Yep.
299.
Thank you.
No problem. I'll just give about half a minute for people to get in, Carlo, and do that. I can see some more people going in and voting now.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for bearing with us while we navigate this new technology. I think it's working very well though.
Yes.
There's a raised hand there, Jane. Elisabetta.
Elisabetta. Oh, it's down.
Go on.
Sorry, thank you. Okay, so we actually have 26 voting in favour of the motion at present. So can we have that logged as this is a procedural motion and we need 50% for a procedural motion? It's looking as though it will be carried. Obviously, we have the 24-hour option for others to vote as well.
Yep.
But taking that, we'll move on to the next motions, Carlo.
So going to the next motion, which is a constitutional change in order to enable that which we've just voted on to happen. So we've just voted to have a standardised membership period, and that will require some kind of constitutional change, and there's two motions for it. The preferred motion is that we change the sentence as per Motion 4.2, such that it reads that the full fee for the conference includes a 1-year membership clause of the association for the following 12 months, just simply be removed from their constitution. That is the simplest, in my view, the simplest way around this. I do understand why this was put into the constitution in the early days. However, in terms of background, I'd also like to point out that providing that 1-year membership to people is administratively a nightmare. It has not always been taken up. I'd also, as is reflected in the discussion paper, I don't want to spend too much time on this because it is all in the discussion paper. I'd also like to let people know that the membership of the association is usually less than the discount that you get for conference registration. So it's actually cheaper to just join as a member. And we want people to join as members and maybe keep joining as members. It's cheaper to join as a member and then get the discount of membership rather than to be a non-member and wait for a 12-month free membership. So it's an awkward arrangement in any case, and people don't take it up. So I believe that this is the simplest way of making the Constitution consistent with what we've just voted on. And so I'd propose this motion 4.2.
Carlo, you have two people asking questions. First of all, in the chat channel, yep. Joe Brown is asking, does this mean no membership will be given at all?
Well, Joe, what we've found has happened is that people find out that they could pay a non-member rate, which is a lot higher than just buying membership before they go to the conference and then just taking the member rate at the conference. So it's just a bit of a simplification.
Okay. Thank you, Carlo, for clarifying that. Charlotte also has her hand up, Carlo. So I'll invite Charlotte to ask the question before I ask for a seconder.
Yeah, sorry, I'm actually not following what your intentions are. Could I know one of the key things was that people who attend the conference, the IAWBH needs to benefit as an association from conference attendees. We have all seen where academic conferences, practitioner conferences get handed over to a professional organizer who then takes all the money. So I think the point for me is it's really important that the IAWBH does benefit from those people coming to the conference, does benefit financially from people coming to the conference. And obviously there is an issue in there that we do benefit because people may choose not to cancel their renewal. You know, there's that issue as well. So I just need to be clear from you as to your intention. Are people who come to the conference going to have, one way or another, all become members of the IAWBH and pay a fee to the IAWBH?
Well, Charlotte, I believe that they will, because there is an immediate incentive rather than an incentive 12 months later, in that they can join as a member and get the member rate. So we do get the benefit of having them as a member for the period before the conference and 12 months after they join us. So we still get that benefit. And they get the benefit of not paying a non-member rate. Does that make more sense? It's actually cheaper for them.
But they can still join the conference, be at the conference and not be a member.
No. What people would ideally do is join the association and be a member, and then get the membership discount.
Yeah, absolutely. But could they come to the conference as a non-member?
They could.
Well, you're going to be in trouble because of having another General Assembly. You're going to then have to have people on the door checking how much, you know, what way did people actually join the conference?
Sure, but that's been a problem since all General Assemblies, Charlotte. We've encouraged members to come to the General Assembly, but we've also encouraged everyone to come to the General Assembly and just not vote if they weren't a member.
I don't know. I mean, I must say, I think I'm not sure actually whether I'm I'm countering this because of I think this might be a different issue than what you're asking about. I can see that you're asking about timing. I'm suggesting that it is important that everybody who comes to the conference pays this small amount to be part of the IAWBH.
Sure.
And I think I think the IAWBH is silly if it doesn't actually get that 60/70 pounds out of every single delegate.
I think that's a slightly different issue, but I guess what we are relying on is people's self-interest taking over to figure out that it's much cheaper for them to join us and pay a lower rate than to pay a much, much, much higher rate and not join us.
Carlo, my point is, when you start giving people the option, in later generations of people in your position, there will be someone who actually wants to make that about the same. So this is a really important point right now. It is not what's happening next year or the year after, probably, when this non-member rate will be huge. It's actually that you're opening the door to someone coming in saying, oh, let's make the conference an amount and then let's charge extra for the membership. That's what you're opening the door to, and that worries me.
I don't believe, Charlotte, that we're opening the door for that. It is enshrined in all of the conference agreements that members have a reduced rate, and that's not being changed in the Constitution. Members will always have a protected rate. I guess another piece of information, I had to deal with this over several years, where these people who are non-members were given membership. It is administratively very, 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 very difficult for us. And it would be so much easier and take so much less of our time if we could just encourage people to join us and get a discount.
Yep. All right. There are several other people who have raised their hands. Bevan was first. Bevan, would you like to talk to the point?
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, I was just going to quickly respond to Charlotte's point about the conference. So with the exception of membership, my understanding is that of the last 3 conferences, the association has seen no financial return from those conferences. So 1 from 3. So the conferences do not appear to be a revenue source for us. So we're not benefiting from the conference anyway.
Well, I find that extraordinary. And I think the board, I hope you look at that in your new strategic planning, because you should come out with something.
Well, of course we should.
Lovely.
Absolutely agree.
And the point, my point being that actually giving people, that I think this decoupling is that you're actually, well, anyway, I'm shutting up.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Charlotte, for the point. Thank you, Bevan, for coming in. Stola, you also had your hand raised, and I think we can just take one more question and then we'll need to move on.
I also have a big concern here, because when we started up, this is the way it is now. That is the way that the association actually get the money from the conferences. I've been running the conferences in the board for many years, and I know one thing. The big problem is to get, let's say a conference has a surplus. Well, this money are now in a university somewhere. And then the question is, do we get that back to the association? That has not been easy. So the way that we in practice has got money out of the conferences is exactly that people are getting in as members first, and then they go to the conference with a discount rate. So that's the way we have implicitly benefited from the conference. And that's why this was set up the way it is. And although it sounds reasonable, Carlo, that you say, well, they will just do that to get the money and to save some money. Well, that's fine with me, because they are still going to the bullion conferences. And the normal thing in conferences, let's say, for instance, the European Work and Organizational Conference, when you go there as a member, you are, as I said, participant, you are a member for the next 2 years, actually. So it is normally in associations like us, that is the conferences that generates the money. And if we move to do what you're suggesting now, we are in a big risk that we will have much lower membership, much lower income, and in the long run, a big problem. This I know from many years of running these conferences from the board.
Carlo?
I think we're overestimating the numbers and conflating several issues that are unrelated. It's not that many people that are non-members that are in this category.
But the reason is that this is the way we get in money. I think you are looking at this from one angle, but there's another angle, and that is you will have fewer participants, or fewer members in this way, and you will have more problems of getting the money out of the conferences. Then you have a totally different arrangement with the local organizer than we had, and I know that is very difficult. As long as you have your universities as the one who runs the conferences, you have problem here.
The issue of getting money out of the local organising committee is a completely separate issue, and the Constitution doesn't touch on that. The conference agreements go to that. So
yeah, but this is our experience, Carlo. I know that, but listen, This is our experiences. We've done it for many years, and we know you have to work very hard. And as long as universities run it, I know there's a problem of getting the money out. Then you have to have an agreement saying that the local organizer will have to pay so and so much money per participant to the association. We have done it the other way around. We have promised them seed money. So we actually be giving money from the association to the local organizers.
Okay.
But then we have to do it all the way around.
It sounds like there's opposition to this. Is the other motion more acceptable? That is 4.3. Sorry, I'm trying to see it on my screen. Sorry.
Carlo, could I ask a question with just coming back to this? Actually, for me, it feels as if there are two issues. One is how many members have we got, and that the IAWBH gets that money from the membership. Strikes me that if they are applying to the IAWBH and paying the IAWBH keeps that money, right, as members. Is that correct?
Membership money, that's correct. Conference money goes into a different pot.
Yeah, and that's where I think Stoller, we have Stoller talking about the money that goes into the pot that makes the profit, hopefully, for the organisation.
Which is then
and
fed
that
back
at the end of at the end of the day should be coming back. So these are two separate issues. My concern, and what Bevan is saying is that we have not had anything back at the IAWBH for the past 3 conferences. And personally, and that for me is a separate issue to making sure that we are getting the membership money, because what worries me about motion 4.3 is that it gets worse, because in 4.3 we're actually asking someone else to administer the association fees. Are we? Maybe I should ask the question. Are we then asking the person who runs the conference to administer gathering association fees?
No.
Or we're not? Brilliant.
No, we're not.
Well, I'm
never
happy.
worked that way. I'm sorry if that's unclear. The membership monies run through the association. The event registration monies run through the local organising committee, for which there are agreements about what happens with those monies if there's anything left over. Motion 4.3 would not be asking them to administrate monies for us. What 4.3 does, the main difference is that people who are not members will get membership, but the Constitution's not saying that it's a 12-month membership. It's a membership up to the next renewal date, making it consistent with what we agreed on about the standardization of renewal dates. So 4.3 would mean that a person who's not a member coming to a conference in, say, July, let's say it's in July, because it could be in August, it could be any time, right? Has a membership that lasts them up to the period of the next membership renewal, which for argument's sake might be March of the following year. It's the difference between the two motions is removing the time issue of 12 months, because the time issue of 12 months is inconsistent with the standard membership period.
So Carlo.
Still, yep.
Stoller?
Yep. I'm still worried about the financial part here, because still the money goes to the conference. You say it's 2 different numbers, but in fact, when I then register for the conference and I got not the full year, but I got the rest of the term as a member, those money, that part of the conference fee, it still goes to the local organizer. That's what I'm worried about. And my experience is, long before the last 3 ones, is that you don't get any money back from the local organizer. First of all, they will budget it so that they tend to go in zero. That's first of all. And secondly, if there's any money left there, you will have problems getting them out to the
So,
to the company.
Stola, it would seem then that the solution to your concern is to have people pay a membership fee to the association.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Direct.
And if you
Direct.
That's what this does.
And that's
no,
that's
the
what
full fee
4.2 does.
No.
Yeah, 4.2. Yes, it does. The current situation is that the money goes to the conference organiser, and 4.2 is saying no, the money goes directly to IAWBA.
No,
Sorry for
it says
butting
the
in,
full
but
fee. It says
really
the full
clear.
fee. It says the full fee for the conference. So that means that the money goes to the conference.
No, it's
doesn't say.
4.2 is removing that clause from the Constitution.
Could I make a suggestion?
Well, how do you do this with, because it's still the full fee? If that means that the fees are now going, the conference fees are now going to the association and then to the, but how do you do this then?
Could I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
Could I say if we looked at 4.3, I hope I'm trying to be constructive here. The full fee for the conference includes a 1-year membership payable to the association. So it doesn't matter whether they...
Carlo, can I just speak? That I think the two things are being muddled up or being conflated here, and that is a conference agreement and this membership as being part of that conference agreement. And Carlo is trying to separate them. And I think that's a really important thing to do. Motion 4.2 removes the membership fee from the conference fee and allows the participants to make the membership fee directly to the association.
That's right.
And I
for
think
me
that's
would be
the
preferable.
simplest and cleanest way to do it.
It makes people pay a membership fee to the organisation such that they will get a member rate to the conference. At the moment, the Constitution enshrines that anyone who's not a member gets a free membership for a year.
And the problem with that, as Stoll has pointed out, is that that free membership that they're getting, well, it's not free because it's part of their conference fee, is going to the conference organiser. And even if you have an agreement with the conference organiser, Stoll has said historically you're having trouble getting that money out of them.
Yes.
So decoupling it is very sensible. And it's a good idea, Carlo.
Those monies, it was always treated as free membership. Yeah. It was never separated as a £60 fee that would then go to the association. That never happened.
So Carlo, just to come in here, just for, thinking about time. So motion 4.2 focuses on ensuring that the IAWBH gets that the year's membership. And it doesn't go, as Stoller has rightly said, he's worried about it going to the conference organisers. So the purpose, and Penny's discussed that as well. Can you just clarify that's your intention?
That's right.
Yeah. So that we can move on, can I ask for a seconder for the motion of 4.2?
Yes, I will. Penny,
thank you very much. Penny has seconded the motion. What I will ask Carlo to do now is to go on to Slido and to put the motion there. I note that there are several members who have put points of view in the chat, and I would encourage the board to have a look at those afterwards and take those into consideration in thinking about moving forward. So motion 4.2 that the sentence, the full fee for the conference includes a 1-year membership of the association for the following 12 months, be removed from clause 22 of the governance section of the Constitution. This is a constitutional amendment, so a 2/3 vote is required for it to carry. I would ask anybody that is here at the meeting today to vote. And then obviously the 24-hour window will be open and we will know the results after that point in time. So we have members going in at the moment and voting. So we have 22 members in the live poll at the moment. 17 have voted in favour, 1 against, and 4 abstaining. We have 24 hours for the motion to be carried or not. So at this moment, we'll leave it open to the 24-hour rule, Carlo. Okay?
Sure. So because motion 4.3 depends on this one being carried or not, I think the most appropriate thing for us to do is to just note in our minutes that that looks like it will be carried, and then not take a vote on motion 4.3. That's how I propose to do it. Does that sound reasonable? Yep.
Yes. Could I ask everybody to go into the participants box and raise their hand just to give Carlo they're okay with that?
Okay, it looks like there's wide support for that.
Yeah. Looks like there's wide support for that, Carlo. So you can move on to
Thanks,
the
everyone.
next.
I'm sorry that that was unclear. Sorry, I've got... Okay. This is the next item, and I doubt that there will be controversy on this. I really hope there won't be controversy on this, because this is something I'm supporting very, very strongly. As Charlotte alluded to before, we currently have it in our constitution that practitioners, well, sorry, not just practitioners, but that anyone who doesn't have an academic position, and not just an academic position, but a full-time academic position, cannot be the president of our association. I think that that's unacceptable. And I know many of you agree with that. I should note that I was not aware of, as Charlotte said, people had approached her and expressed frustration about this. I was not aware of that. But this is something that came up in our board discussions. It's just not okay that all of our members can't be the president of our association. We're an association that's based on the idea of equity and equality and dignity and respect. And so I don't even think I need to speak too much about this one. I would like to propose this motion.
Yep.
And let's get it done.
Yep.
Would anyone like to speak against it?
I just think you've got the wrong motion up there.
Yeah.
You've got 4.4.
4.3 was
Oh, here we
taken
go.
out.
What's it?
It is 4.4.
This is about being elected every 2 years. The candidate must have been a member of for a continuous period of 3.5 years.
It's on the screen, Penny.
So what Carlo is proposing with this motion is a striking out of
Oh yes,
and must
sorry.
hold a full-time academic position. That's okay.
Sorry about that. Yep.
So it's removing academic position and it's removing full-time academic position.
Yes,
It's
yes.
discriminatory.
Very.
So we're on the same page now, I hope.
Yes, sorry.
Right.
So we still have a lot of participants with their hands up from the last poll that we did. Can I ask if you can remove your hands if you have a question of Carlo regarding this motion? Alison Ballard. Oh, Alison's hand is down. Sorry, Alison. Stola.
So I would argue I would argue very, very strongly against this, because it is not an issue of kind of fairness. It is an issue of what kind of organization that we basically set up. And the basis, and of course, when we set it up a long time ago, we really, of course, had long discussions on this. It has something to do with, even if we are kind of cross-national, we are across this and internet, it is an academic base of this organization. And it has to do many things. It has having the resources at the time. I'm not so preoccupied with the full time. I work half time. That's fine with me. But it is basically an academic organization. That's what we want with, and to keep up also the status of it and the focus on research on it. Because I'm really worried looking at the last conferences of the standard of scientific research at our conferences. And I'm really concerned that many of leading researchers in the field are not a part of our association and do not come to our conferences. And to keep up the quality and over a long time, we need to have people in that position who also knows that part. So I will vote against this, and I will do that strongly.
Thank you, Stola, for putting your point of view forward. Carlo, would you like to respond?
I would like to respond, but I think I'd like Adrienne to respond first, please. And I'd also like Charlotte to have something to say if she'd like to, and I'd like Shane to have something to say if she'd like to, as a practitioner member of the board.
Can I go first?
Yes, please.
Do you know, Stola, I have noticed also that I don't have the same problem with the quality of the presentations. I think we have more presentations, and I think there are still within those presentations at the conference very good quality ones. I think that it is important to engage the top people, and I think that is a separate issue to who is the president. And I think that within the board, we need to have some real focus. And again, this is about the strategic direction. How can we be much more punchy, probably in other circumstances, such as IAWBH and places like that, the Academy, to actually bring in the type of research and the keynotes that we want to have at our conferences, to make them worth coming to for those top people. I don't think that has anything to do with who is president. Personally, I think, and I don't observe that either in other places where people have some presidents. I have no idea who they are, but they're enormously prestigious organizations that I would follow. So I will be voting for this. But nevertheless, I have no problem with your fundamental point, which is that we do need to appeal to top people. And we perhaps are slipping on that. But I'm not sure it's solved by, I don't think it's solved by the president. Also, can I say, not a single practitioner has applied for anything this year, apart from Shane. So, you know, how we're going to achieve a practitioner president, I have no idea. So, being the person who receives the nominations, I can't see it happening. But, you know, I'm delighted that people can apply. I don't think you need to worry if this gets passed.
Thank you, Charlotte. Now, I know that we do have some others that have raised their hands. I'm going to limit the, in the interests of timing, I'm going to limit each person to a minute to put their point forward. So we have Adrienne. Adrienne, would you like to put your point forward, please?
Yes, please. I'm a practitioner, but I am a member of the IAWBH because of the academic character. And I completely agree with Stola and Arsen. I'm really afraid that we are getting more and more a practitioners association and losing the academics. I know about academics who left the organization because they didn't like the more practitioner kind. So I think it is in origin an academic organization, a scholarly association, and I really would like to continue that. That's my point.
Thank you, Adrian. Naziruddin, you have your hand up. Naziruddin?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Yes, we can.
Apologies, I think I was on mute. I started by saying I'm quite new, but the point I'm just looking at is what do we want to achieve by this? Is it like we have problem with full time, which I think is quite understandable, or we have a problem with the academic as a whole? And I think it goes to the philosophy of the association. If it's academically driven, then we may not want to have activists powering the activities of the association, because that may probably move it to a different agenda, which I think one of the issues raised was kind of to depoliticize some of the issues, like I think the discussion regarding ethics of a country and what have you. So the academic rigor, I think it's important in order to give it some objectivity. But maybe we may have problem with having a full time. Maybe we can make it academic. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your point. Helga, and then Shane, and then we'll bring it to a close. Oh, Carlo, sorry, beforehand. We can't hear you, Carlo. You're on mute.
No, please go first. I'd like to come back there.
Okay. Helge?
Well, I would just like to express my support to keeping the issue of the academic position in there for the standing of the organization. I think it is important. I do think it would be helpful if this motion was actually split, because I do support the thing, of course, that it should be open for part-timers, particularly on the basis of being in fairness and the issue of gender and equality and more women in part-time position and so on. So I think it would have been helpful if that was taken on, because I would certainly vote for it being open to taking out that requirement of a full-time, which reflected very much the time when this was set up, but there were hardly any academic part-time jobs at all. So, but I do think I would argue strongly, like Ståle, in favor of keeping this thing as a scholarly association, because of the signal it sends. And that's why I think that the president has that particular role. It sends a signal at what we are about, which also Adriana expressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Helge. One final comment from Shane, and then we'll go back to Carlo.
Thank you, Jane. I agree that the issue of academic rigor is a different issue altogether as far as I'm concerned. You want to talk about expanding your membership. If practitioners don't have equal rights within the organisation, then what's the advantage for practitioners to remain in the organisation? Practice informs the research, research informs the practice, and that should be a cooperative, collaborative situation. Most of the practitioners have extremely advanced educational standing anyway, and I would be very sorry to see many of our practitioners have come from a strong research basis. Many have PhDs, and to say that they don't have standing in an academic community, I think, is an unfair and inappropriate comment to be making.
Thank you, Shane. Carlo?
I agree with Shane. I have to say I'm a little disappointed and somewhat surprised. This is not saying that a practitioner has to be the president. This is just saying that someone who's not employed in a full-time academic role could be. This is removing a structural barrier. And I'm an academic, and of course it's important for our association to keep academic rigor. But I have absolutely no concerns about us being able to keep academic rigour with the kinds of people that we have on our boards. We currently have all academics, bar one, on our board, and you know, we rely on academics from around the world contributing, and we need more of them, absolutely. But I think in picking up on what Helga said about the signal that it also sends a signal if you've got someone who's not employed in an academic role leading this organisation. It sends a signal across the community that's working in this field. I think it's also important what Shane said. We get into this narrative of practitioner versus academic. These people don't have to be practitioners. They're just people who don't work in tertiary institutions. And so I think it's messed up is the best kind of phraseology that's coming to mind at the moment. This removes a structural barrier. I think this should pass, and I have little concerns for the academic quality. If we're going to talk about academic quality, then there's lots of other things that we need to do, including getting our academic colleagues to keep coming and keep contributing. So I'd like to put this motion and have a vote on it, please.
Thank you, Carlo. So Carlo has proposed the motion. Can I ask for somebody to second the motion by raising their hand in the participant channel?
Oh, don't know how to do that.
I will, yep.
Sarah Branch? Sarah Branch has seconded the motion. So we'll put the motion to the membership, Carlo. If you could please put that into Slido. Just while you're doing that, Carlo, and just to bring the board's attention to, there are quite a lot of individual points of view coming through on the chat channel. So after the meeting is over, you'll be able to go through those and have a look at those as well. So motion 4.4 is now up on Slido. I will read it out. So that clause 6 of the governance section of the Constitution be amended as per the agenda. So it's the striking out of "and must hold a full-time academic position." So I'd ask you to vote either in favour, against, or to abstain. As this is a constitutional motion, of course, it will be open to members to vote over the next 24-hour period. So this is an indicative outcome at the moment. So what I can see on Slido at the moment is that it seems as though most are in favour of the motion. There are several who have voted against, and a couple, including myself, who have abstained. So we'll leave it to the membership for 24 hours to give us their wider opinion on this particular motion. Okay.
Thanks, Jane.
Carlo, would you like to move on to the next motion, which is motion 4.5?
Sure. This is an unrelated motion, but an important one nonetheless. This motion, I'm not going to speak to it too long because we're way, way over time. This is a motion to include something in our constitution that enables the board to remove a board member or the president. I'm not expecting this to be needed in the next 2 years. I have been confirmed as the president for 2 years, but not Charlotte. Am I still the president?
Yes, of course you are.
Good. I'm not expecting this to be needed in the next 2 years. I'm not expecting this to be needed ever, but it's an important thing for us to have in our constitution that should someone be doing the wrong thing, that the board can have a mechanism to remove that person, and that person can then, as it's phrased here, have an appeals mechanism to this group, to the General Assembly. You've read this in the discussion paper, I hope. So it shouldn't need too much more context. I'd like to propose this motion. I think it's fairly clear why it's part of good practice to have it. So I'd like to propose this, Jane, please.
Thank you, Carlo. Can I ask everyone to go into the participants box now, to lower your hands if you've had it up from another question. Just very briefly, does anybody have a question that they would like to ask Carlo very quickly about this in the interests of expediency? No questions? Oh, Helga?
No question. I'd like to
second the motion.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Helga.
Yeah, I personally would like to speak against this motion. Now, the thing is, I can see the sentiment, I can see where it comes from, but I do not think, for three reasons, I do not think we need it. I do think that what is suggested does not represent a fair process. And I think should it ever come to be used, it could be extremely divisive for the organization. We have been there for 12 years now. We have not needed it, as like Carlos said, we hopefully will never need it. The thing is that these type of issues do pop up. People do not do their jobs, and people are, and for that reason, some people are supported, some people are giving different role, some people are maybe asked to stand down, and these are normally taken care of if, for example, they don't turn up for meetings regularly and they've been then substituted. And of course, there could be extreme mismanagement. It could even be things like fraud. And then I think that there are other mechanisms, like even going to the police. Now, I think the issue here, when it could become used, is an issue which related directly to somebody doing things like misbehaving, somebody being accused of bullying, somebody being accused of sexual harassment. There exists when a conflict between two or more people exist in the board. And then I think this form of conflict management is an extremely poor way of dealing with it. I think it, by means of vote, I think it would lead to a huge conflict. I think also in terms of the situation with somebody accusing somebody of, for example, bullying, or a meeting, the forum of a meeting from bullying research, we know that's the worst type of way of dealing with this. So we as bullying researcher and harassment researcher, we should not make use of a mechanism like this, because it can be used exactly for these type of scenarios. I can envisage something could happen like that, or God forbid it happen, but that somebody feeling sexually harassed by somebody else, and then we get into an argument about this issue, and this is not the way of handling these issues. And then the appeal, then the process then suggested that the person can call an extraordinary GA. That, of course, given that you already are voted down by a majority, not only majority, unanimously as suggested, what chance do you stand in an extraordinary General Assembly to actually raise your case when you have 6 people who can prepare their case in advance to get a fair hearing on such an extraordinary meeting? The only way we could have got a fair hearing was that we had a separate process, for example, by independent investigators. But if we had that in place, that would cost an arm and a leg, and it could take up all the resources of the organization if we really wanted to do it. And then, in addition to that, if we had that up at the General Assembly, and there is somebody, we could very easily get the side taking, somebody coming in the meeting, leading to, I see the chance of a great split. This is a serious matter. We do not need this. It just leads us into problem. So please, I would really strongly advise you to withdraw it, because it's not thought through carefully. I can see where I come from, but we don't need it.
Thank you, Helga, for your point. Can I ask Shane, you have your hand up to put your point forward, and then Carlo, I'll ask you to respond.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Helgi. To my mind, the motion doesn't eliminate all those options that you talked about, Helgi. This is a situation of last resort, that if all else fails with all sorts of conflict resolution, all of those possibilities going through, then the board is hamstrung, and the organisation is hamstrung in terms of we don't have any method to remove somebody. You talked about going to the police if it's something like an extraordinary financial disaster for whatever reason. I don't think it ever would be. But which police would you go to? The police in the country of where we're registered, the police in the country of where the person is. Those sorts of things just aren't in there. So it's just, to my mind, this is a very, very, very last resort. And I agree with you, hopefully we will never, ever need it. But we don't have any mechanism to remove somebody who has been clearly against everything. And that's why we had a unanimous vote of the board, rather than, that's why this motion has suggested a unanimous vote. So you just need one person who says, no, I disagree with this, and that's fine. We didn't think it was useful to go directly to the General Assembly because then that opens that person up directly, but that would be an appeal mechanism if they were not satisfied with that unanimous vote from the board.
Thank you, Shane. Carlo, would you like to mention anything quickly? Yeah.
No, in the interest of time, I think I'll leave it there, Jane. I agree with what Shane has said. So I think it still needs to be seconded.
Yes, yeah. May I ask for a seconder for the motion?
Can I second?
Anne Wyatt. Anne Wyatt has seconded the motion. Thank you, Shane.
Sorry, who was that?
Anne Wyatt has seconded the motion. Carlo, may I ask you to please put the motion on to Slido and encourage the members present to vote in favour, against or abstain. As with the other constitutional motions, this one will be open for 24 hours. We have people logging in at the moment to cast their votes. So at present, we have 20 people taking part in the poll, 15 in favour of the motion, 2 against and 5 abstaining. In the next 24 hours, those figures may change. They are changing a little bit as we speak. So I will leave this motion open until the 24-hour period has been exhausted. All right. Thank you, Carlo. Carlo, I think that brings to a close the your agenda items.
Yeah, those are the constitutional matters. So I believe Bevan's talking to the next one.
Yes, the next agenda item is agenda item 10. So Bevan, in relation to the consideration of role of President-elect, can I hand over to Bevan now to talk to that motion?
Thanks, Jane. So the IAWBH have had a succession of excellent presidents, as Carlo was ably demonstrating. But consistent with good governance, the board have been considering the extent to which the president's succession should be more planned. For example, those of you who are familiar with the Academy of Management or the Australian and New Zealand Academy of Management will be familiar with how those associations provide a structured pathway. We're also cognizant as a board that the current arrangement gives rise to 2 potential limitations, being the Constitution silent on the requirement or expectation that candidates for president have any prior experience in the governance of the IAWBH, and secondly, that the 2-year tenure is too short. So 2 board members, myself and Shane, prepared a discussion paper, which you have received a copy of, and we prepared this for the board outlining 4 options. First being to create a position of president-elect, to introduce the requirement of a service period, i.e. prior tenure, have the board appoint the president rather than the GA, and fourthly, to retain the status quo. So these options were debated at length by the board, as well as with input from several past presidents. Each of those options, as the paper indicates, had significant advantages and disadvantages. So where we're at is that the board is seeking guidance from members as to whether further time and energy should be spent on considering this matter. And as a result, we have drafted the following motion, which is now before you. And I will move that.
Thank you, Bevan. So Bevan is moving motion 5. Are there any questions to Bevan? I note that in the participants list, we still have raised hands from the last discussion. So if you could take your hand down and re-put it up for me if you have a question. Charlotte? Charlotte, you're on mute at the moment. Do you have a question?
I want to support this motion and also to reinforce that there is an issue. As someone who tries to persuade people to give service to the organisation, actually the president's job is nigh impossible, and it is very onerous, the amount of work that the other board members have to do. I would really welcome this as a exploratory process. I am not sure you're going to find a solution, but I really think it's a good idea, and I think it is excellent to pursue it. And I'd like to thank Shane and Bevan for a good paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Stoller, you had your hand up and put it down. No, I don't think we have any other hands up. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Could I ask for a seconder for Bevan's motion? To please raise your hand in the participants area. Charlotte? Charlotte Rayner has seconded the motion. Carlo, may I ask you to go into Slido now to pop the motion in there, and we'll give the membership present the opportunity to vote. So motion 5, that the board form a working group to explore the issues for creating and implementing a president-elect role, including recommended options and any required constitutional changes. Can I please ask you to vote now on this particular motion? So this particular motion is a procedural motion. At present, we have 16 in favour, 2 against the motion and 2 abstaining. And again, the 24-hour rule applies, but suggests that this motion will carry. Thank you very much, Bevan, for proposing the motion and speaking to it. I'll now move on to agenda item 11 and ask whether there are any other business items that anybody would like to propose before we move to acknowledgements. There are no requests for any other business, so I'll move now on to agenda item 12, which is acknowledgements, and I'll hand over to Carlo, the President, who would like to give some acknowledgements today.
Thanks, Jane. Wow, well, it's been quite a long meeting. When we meet in person and have a General Assembly, we try to keep it to an hour and never succeed. And now that we've met virtually, we have been going for 2.5. Perhaps that suggests that in future we may need additional General Assemblies. Perhaps not every 2 years, but perhaps we can call further General Assemblies to deal with some of the more tricky issues that we need to deal with. And that's something that the board will take on and consider. There's a lot of people to thank. But firstly, I want to thank the outgoing board members. We have 3 board members that are leaving the board. And the first that I wish to acknowledge is Shane Matheson. Shane has been on the board for, I believe it's 8 years, or is it more, Shane? I believe it's 8. And has served as the association's treasurer for almost all of that time. under, I believe, 4 presidents.
Secretary.
Sorry, as the secretary, under 4 presidents, and that is a huge contribution to our association over many, many years. And we want to express our thanks to you, Shane, from all of us. Shane's not going too far. She's going to be going on to the election committee. We're really happy to have your continued service in that way. And I'm sure I'm going to be coming and asking you lots of questions, Shane, in the interim. So thank you very, very much from all of us. I also want to acknowledge Mariam Omari, who joined the board when I did, so 4 years ago. Mariam's not with us in the meeting today, but she's been a great contributor to the board. She has particular skills in strategy, and I have really benefited from having her insight in that kind of area. She's really very good at cutting through the issues and helping us to focus on what we should be looking at. And so, thank you to Mariam for her contributions. And the other person who's leaving the board is Bevan Catley. Bevan came onto the board after being a reserve board member. So the reserve board members, as Charlotte said, are very, very important, and he's been on the board for 3 years. He served in the role of the events coordinator. He was the contact person for events, and he was the right person for that job because he organised that very successful conference in Auckland. That was, I'll note, the last conference that gave us a profit, a tidy profit. He organised a great event, and then he went on the board to help us administrate our events in future. And it's been a great contribution that he's made across that portfolio and all the others. And I've really appreciated having him on the board and all of the board members. So thank you to those 3 members that are leaving the board. It's really, really important to have had their contributions, and they've given a great service to our association. And our association is us. I mean, we talk about the association. It's a service to all of you, all of us. I also want to acknowledge the other board members who are still on the board. So we've still got Neil, Eva, Stephen, and a big, big welcome to our new board members, Margaret and Susan. I don't know if Susan's still with us. I know it's very late in the US. A big welcome to you. And we also look forward to welcoming another new person. If someone wants to put their hand up within the next little while to fill that role, that'll be much appreciated. And it'll be a lot of work, but it will be rewarding and a good experience and a great bunch of people to work with. That I can guarantee. So thank you to all those board members. I also want to thank all the other people that work in our association. So thank you to Charlotte and Minika on the election committee. They've been giving us a great service to find us our board members over the last several years. And thank you to Helga, who's stepping off the governance committee now. And thank you to Niels, who's continuing on the governance committee. I also want to make a special mention of Niels. I can see he's walking around there at the moment. I want to make a special thank you to Niels. Niels is a former board member who served as our treasurer for many years and has been supporting us in extraordinary ways over the last 2 years, supporting us through the treasury portfolio. Our banking system is in Norway, and we're still in a process of fully organising all the transfers, and Niels has been organising that for us and supporting Stephen and myself. And I know Stephen's very thankful for that, and we should all be very appreciative of Niels's continued work in the Treasury. Thank you very much, Niels. We really do appreciate it. Lastly, I want to thank our chair of the General Assembly. Jane, I think you did a fantastic job. It's not an easy role. I was asked to do it once several years ago at 5 minutes before the General Assembly. You had a little more preparation, but not too much more. And you did a great job. It's a challenging role, and it's particularly challenging this year in a virtual environment. So thank you so much for doing that for us. Other than that, I think that's all the thank yous that we have. Have I left anyone out? Can anyone think of who else I need to thank, please? No? Silence. Well, then I'd like to formally put that motion that a vote of thanks be recorded. So I'll put that on Slido. I'm sure it will be the least controversial.
May I have a seconder for the motion?
Stephen has seconded it.
Stephen has seconded it. Thank you, Stephen.
So please vote for that motion. And other than that, that's really all from me. Thank you all to all of you who came to the General Assembly. I've often said in the past that the General Assembly is a really, really important part of our business as an association. We can't have an association without a General Assembly. So I'm often the one rounding people up at the conference saying, get in the meeting room, you've got to be there for an hour. I appreciate this has taken longer than planned, and I thank you for your participation in it. It is really important that we have a General Assembly like this, and I look forward to further events with all of you soon. So
Thank you very much. Sorry.
I think there's a hand raised there, Jane. Oh, I'll hand back to you, Jane, to close the meeting.
Charlotte? No, hand is down. Thank you. So in closing, all agenda items have now been dealt with.
Charlotte's hand is up again.
Oh, Charlotte, sorry, your hand is up again. It's not? No problem. So we've dealt and all agenda items have been presented. The votes have been taken from members present this morning. Sorry, this evening, whenever it is in your time zone. The votes will be open for a further 24 hours. So if you do know of members who weren't able to attend, can you please put them in the direction of the Slido voting process? And I'm sure Shane will be availing everybody of the final results at that particular time. Carlo,
those votes, the voting system is there for people who couldn't attend here. So
yes,
don't go and vote again.
I don't think you can vote again, can you, with your member number? Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't that exciting that you need to vote again. It's only for the people who couldn't be here.
Absolutely. And I'd just like to applaud everybody. It's been a long meeting, but I think it has been a very collegiate meeting with a lot of contributions being put forward by a number of people. So without further ado, I declare this General Assembly closed for the moment at 11:17 European time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.
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 Hi, Carlo.
One sec, Niels.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?